What's going on, people? Welcome back to the Get It Bucket podcast with me, your host, Chris LeBron. I'm joined, as always, with my guy, Kev. Kev, what's going on, bro?
Man, it's the most wonderful time of the year. It's officially the first day. College basketball is back. It's glad. I'm super excited to be back, be here. I can't complain, man. Everything's good. How about yourself?
I'm doing good, man. We got a couple upsets already in this first full day of college basketball. You know, that's how you know basketball, college basketball is here. You get the upsets going on. UCF with the upset of Texas A&M. You know, that UCF team, a very intriguing team. Very intriguing team. And they got the job done, beating, Buzz's boys. My Blue Devils took care of business versus Maine. A little bit, it was close first half. I think it was only like a 12-point game, but they took care of business. I think they won by like 25 points. So they did their job. How your boys look? Michigan State played today, right?
Yeah, we ended up beating Monmouth.
You're right. You played Monmouth, yeah.
Pretty handily. I think we won by 20 plus. Jace Richardson looked pretty good. Jaden Akins tied his career high. I thought Jeremy Frizz was aggressive. He set the tone for us early. We could not shoot from three, which was the same case last year early in the season, but I think that'll figure itself out. I just think it's just the first game thing. Everybody just kind of getting the jitters out and the nerves out, but good win nonetheless. I'll take it 1-0 and let's keep it rolling.
That's exactly right. You get that first game out of the way, regardless of who you play, get the dub, and continue to play on. But today's podcast, we're going to continue our conference previews, and we're going to talk about one of the better conferences in the country. That is the mighty Big 12. And the Big 12 had a lot of representatives in the dance last year. 8 teams were in the dance last year. Houston Cougars won the Big 12 last year and was, a lot of people were skeptical. Can Houston make the transition from, playing in a non-power 5 or whatever power is there anymore? I don't even know how many powers there are anymore. Until going to the Big 12, it's big boy play. And, I think especially you were like, man, teams should be worried about them coming into the Big 12, not the other way around. And guess what happened? That was the case. And if it wasn't for an injury, to their star guard, maybe we're talking about a different outcome. Maybe not different outcome because UConn is UConn, but maybe, maybe some differences happening last year for Houston. But overall, before we get into some of these teams, just what's your overall thoughts of the Big 12 heading into this season?
It's going to be an absolute juggernaut, and I think it's the best conference in college basketball. But specifically, it's top heavy, right? You look at Iowa State, pretty much brings back their entire core with Taman Lipsey, Keyshawn Gilbert, Milan Momcilovic, Curtis Jones. Houston, you lose Jamal Shead, but it feels like they just re-upped even more, right? They bring back everybody. Emmanuel Sharp, Jawan Roberts, Javier Francis, Malik Wilson, LJ Cryer. They bring back everybody. Terrence Arsenal is healthy this year. A lot of people have him on NBA draft radars. I think he's going to be really, really good for them. You look at Kansas, right? Bill Self, he said it once the tournament ended last year that he was hungry to get back to it, and they completely reloaded, right? You bring in AJ Storr from Wisconsin, you bring back Hunter Dickinson, and all these guys. It's too many guys to name. DeJuan Harris, right? And you bring in Zeke Mayo from different places, so they got a real good squad. And then you add in Arizona, Tommy Lloyd, who hasn't had the tournament success, but we know the brand that Arizona is, and they have a pretty good team down there in Tucson as well. So I think the top is very interesting, but I think the middle is interesting as well, right? You mentioned, UCF getting a big time win at home today versus Texas A&M. Everybody's Cincinnati wave. I'm kind of on pause control right there just because I got to see it from Wes Miller. They do have a good squad. We'll talk about them, but they got to show us. Kansas State, to me, is probably the most interesting team in this entire conference, right? Jerome Tang had a down year last year, looking to, bounce back this year. They have a lot of transfers down there in Manhattan, Kansas. So This conference is fascinating. We haven't even touched on TCU. Oklahoma State got a new head coach. It's so many different things. Even West Virginia, that's probably my sleeper team. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'll just put that out there right now. West Virginia, you get Coach DeVries, you bring over his son, you bring in Javon Small, who I thought was one of the most underrated guards in the country last year at Oklahoma State. Obviously, his coach got fired, so that's why he left, but they got a pretty good team. Amani Hansberry, Sincere Harris, amongst other players. Like, this conference is fascinating, man. From top to bottom, it's just so much talent. And we haven't even touched on Texas Tech. Graham McCasland had a major season last year in his first year in Lubbock, and he brought back a whole bunch of talent and brought in some talent too. JT Toppin coming on from New Mexico State, right? It's a lot, or New Mexico, excuse me. So it's a lot of guys in this conference, and it's a lot of really good and high-level coaches, and there's going to be a war every single night in this conference, and I cannot wait for it to actually kick off.
Yeah, man, it's the best conference in the country. It's, it has abundance of teams that, obviously Houston, Iowa State, if you want to put Baylor in there, they're a top 10 team. Those are teams that could potentially be fighting for your Kansas. They're also fighting to be, in that Final Four. But it's just very well balanced, from top to bottom. And, some of the newer teams that came in last year, the BYUs, the Cincinnati's coming in. And then we got, some newer teams coming in. Both Arizona State coming into the Big 12, Colorado, and Utah. Let's talk about those four newcomers, from, rank them as far as, from best to worst coming in.
Man, I got to put Arizona State at the bottom. You just have to. And I feel bad for Bobby Hurley, but we seen they scrimmaged you guys, or they played an exhibition versus you guys. And that was
that ass.
bad. What was it, like a 50-point loss?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And it's insane because they actually do have talent. They brought in Josan Sanders, who was originally committed to Arizona. He decommitted, reclassified out of the Northeast, ended up going from Arizona to Arizona State.
Jaden Quaintance.
Yeah, he was looked at as one of the top players in all of high school, regardless of class. He decides to reclassify, was originally going to end up at Kentucky with John Calipari. Cal goes from Kentucky to Arkansas. That changes everything. Now he's down there. So it's not anything about the talent, but at the same time, Arizona State's one of those programs where they're not fully invested into their sports. They're just not. And shout out to the football team. Kenny Dillingham's doing a pretty good job on that side, but they're one of the programs that they care more about academics and athletics. And in 2024, if that's the case, you're going to get left behind. That's just the facts of the matter. And so you have that, and then you have Bobby kind of struggling. Is no real consistency or rhythm there. After that, I'd have to put Colorado, right? Tad Boyle has always been one of the most interesting coaches to me, just because you never know what you're going to get from a year-to-year basis, right? Last year, they had an amazing year. Tristan Da Silva goes lottery. Cody Williams goes lottery. They make it to the NCAA tournament. I think they win, 2 games? I think they might have gotten to the Sweet 16. They win 1 game at least. And other years, it's like they're not even a threat. They're not even in the picture. You don't even hear about them. They're just Colorado. They're just an easy team you beat in the Pac-12. So Tad Boyle, I think, is going to be skating on thin ice, especially because you're going from a tougher conference, you're going from a weaker conference to a tougher conference, going from the Pac-12, or what was the Pac-12, to the Big 12. So you have that. Then I'll go with the Utes. And Utah is interesting because they actually get players. Like, Brendan Carlson was a pretty good player for them these past few years, and they could just never fully put it together. And I think Craig Smith has had a lot of experience, in the state of Utah. And again, it's a program where they have players, right? Davon Smith left there. He's now at St. John's with Rick Pitino. And they've had guys come through their program. They had pros come through their program. You look at Kyle Kuzma, DeLon Wright, right? You've had dudes in that program. So I think Utah can be really good. So if I had to go in that order, I'd go in that order. And of course, Arizona speaks for itself, right? Tommy Lloyd, even though he hasn't had the NCAA tournament success, he's getting players in there, right? Especially from the international realm. And they're winning at a high rate in the non-conference and the conference play. And again, this applies to him as well. Going from the Pac-12 to the Big 12 is a major jump. In the Pac-12, you had leaps and bounds over everybody. And let's also be honest here too. I don't want to discredit him when I say this, but the facts of the matter is he inherited a really, really good group in his first year there from Sean Miller, where you had Benedict Mathurin, Christian Coloco, all these guys on that team, Pele Larson, who's playing for my Heat right now. You had NBA players on your roster, so that helps boost your foundation a lot. And that's not a knock on him because he earned that. He put in a lot of time with Mark Few as an assistant coach at Gonzaga, so I'm not going to knock him whatsoever. But now we're going to see if you can really go toe-to-toe with the Goliaths because, again, in the Pac-12, everybody was looking up to you. Now you're just another shark in a shark pool. You know what I'm saying? So I'm very curious to see how Arizona transitions because it's not make or break by any means, but I mean, they're waiting for Tommy Lloyd to make that deep run. He has to eventually, right? You remember a couple years ago, they lost, I believe, in the first round of Princeton, right? And that just can't happen in Arizona. So I'm very fascinated to see how the Wildcats make the transition.
I wonder if now being in the Big 12 and just the competition from top to bottom. Obviously, they played in the Pac-12 and they mostly dominated, but they weren't tested. And then once you get to the tournament, they're getting bounced early. I wonder if now they're in the Big 12. Yeah, they're going to have probably some more losses than they had if they were in the Pac-12, obviously. But maybe that adds an extra, layer of toughness that it seems like they've been missing. So I'm wondering if that's something that they're going to benefit from playing in a tougher conference now. So that's interesting. But they bring back, they bring back Caleb Love. Obviously, is an absolute bucket. Jaden Bradley, KJ, So I think, obviously there's going to be games where they're going to be tested, but they have a nice group of guys coming back that I feel like they'll be able to hold their own in the Big 12. Like I said, it's going to be tough. It's a different brand of basketball, obviously, will come. But I think that rankings of what you had, I think that's probably what I would have too. I think Arizona is in the best spot of all of the newcomers coming in to the Big 12. It's just like I said, it's going to be a dogfight. But we also got some new coaches in the Big 12. 3 new coaches. Mark Pope, obviously, we know Mark Pope is over at Kentucky. Kevin Young takes over for him at BYU. Mike Boynton, former coach, Oklahoma State. Steve Lutz takes over the job at Oak State. And Bob Huggins, retired legend, one of the greatest coaches in college basketball history. And DeVries comes in from Drake, brings his son. So let's go over some of these three guys. But let's kind of do, a rankings too, from who has the toughest job to who has it the best. So who would you rank as far as who has the toughest to the who has the best?
Toughest, I definitely go Coach Lutz at Oklahoma State, right? Because Oklahoma State can be good, right? Oklahoma State is a very strange program because they're another program kind of like Utah where they've had plenty of talent go through there, right? Plenty of talent. I mean, so you look at Kay Cunningham, you look at Lindy Waters in the NBA right now, you look at a whole bunch of guys that, have been in that program. And even my guy, Jawan Evans, real ones remember Jawan Evans. He was a bucket at Oklahoma State. So they can get players. At the same time, it's just tough, right? Because 1, you're not the biggest school in your state. 2, you're in the Big 12. And I think the thing with them is that they're one of those schools where they have to creep into that Dallas-Fort Worth area and take like that second-tier talent, right? Because there's a lot of talent, obviously, in Texas, and it's talent in Oklahoma too. But you've seen some of the top dudes from Oklahoma leave, whether it's Trey Young, Trey Alexander. I can keep going, and a whole bunch of guys that just ended up leaving and going off to other places. But to me, it's got to be Lutz. It has to be Lutz. I mean, it's just a tough job. Mike Boynton wasn't terrible. He was just inconsistent. And it's tough at Oklahoma State, right? So I definitely put Lutz up there. And then after that, you look at West Virginia, you look at BYU. I'd probably go DeVries after that because Darian DeVries is a good coach, right? Had a lot of success at Drake, right? They were consistently an NCAA tournament threat year in and year out. And West Virginia is another program where, you just got to be able to get talent from anywhere, whether it's the JUCO ranks, the transfer portal, whether it's whatever the case may be, right? Because let's be honest, West Virginia is not the most attractive state to be in the country, if we're just calling a spade a spade. Shout out to White Chocolate and Randy Moss, but it's just a fact of the matter. But at the same time, I mean, Bob Huggins had it jumping for a long time, right? And Darian DeVries, why I mentioned they're my sleepers, because you have his son Tucker, as I mentioned, and Devon Small, man. I could not continue to say enough about this dude. He is a major, major point guard problem. Another one of those guys. We got to shout out Eastern Carolina because they put out a lot of good transfer players, whether it was Tristan Newton, him. I could keep going down the line, right? But West Virginia is a good program, and they do have money out there, and they want to compete at a high level, and they want to get back to being a relevant basketball program because the last 2 years have been very tumultuous because of, the Bob Huggins situation. At the same time, again, is West Virginia. And then least toughest, I'm giving it to Kevin Young just because we're seeing right now AJ DeBanza is probably going to end up going there. And that does come with pressure, right? That does come with pressure. But shout out to my guy Mike. He's from the state of Utah. Utah is trying to turn themselves into a hub of the United States. I don't think people really know, but I believe they just introduced a hockey team. And you're seeing,
the hockey. I think that's what they're called, the hockey team. I'm pretty sure that's what their name is.
Exactly. So they just introduced a hockey team, right? I believe BYU football is still at the top of the Big 12 football standings. If I could be mistaken about that, but I want to say they are. Yeah. Exactly. And
aren't they backed up by your boy? Used to play for Michigan State.
Yes.
Because I'm like, yo, where are they getting AJ DeBanza? Like they in on AJ? Like I know he plays out there, right? So, so I'm like, yo, where are they getting this money? And then like the coach was coaching at Phoenix.
Yes.
And so I'm like, oh, it all makes sense now. Okay, exactly. I get it.
That's where I was gonna go. Kevin Young was the highest paid assistant coach in the NBA last year, under Frank Vogel, playing for the Phoenix Suns, or coaching for the Phoenix Suns, shall I say? And he left it to take BYU. And I want to give Mark Pope some credit, right? Because Mark Pope did do a good job there last year, getting into the tournament, squeezing them in there in their first year in the Big 12. But BYU is not an attractive destination for reasons that we clearly know why, right? But at the same time, money is going into the state of Utah. The Jazz, even though they're not that good right now, are bringing in money. You look at Utah football has consistently been a threat for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
The people of Utah are trying to make Utah a relevant place on the map in those 50 states of the United States of America. And it's headed by none other than Danny Ainge. It's mostly Danny Ainge that's trying to do all this. And they're giving Kevin Young all of the benefits, and they're giving them all of the resources that they could possibly have to make BYU a relevant basketball program and keep up the momentum that Mark Pope just left them with. So I want to say he has the easiest job, but I kind of just made a case that he has the toughest job because especially when you get a dude like AJ DeBanza, that pressure is going to rise. And yeah, that'll be in his second season there. For his first season, they are getting a lot of hype. I guess we'll talk about them in a minute. I don't really see it, me personally, but I mean, BYU, they trying to make some noise out there, so I cannot knock them whatsoever. But if I had to rank it, I'd go like that. Oklahoma State, West Virginia, BYU.
BYU, it's so fascinating. It's really fascinating to me that BYU has a shot to get arguably one of the best high school kids we've seen in a long time. Like we're so used to like him thinking, all right, he's going to go to Duke, he's going to go to Carolina, Kansas, Kentucky or Arkansas now with Cal, and that's like, nah, BYU. And I'm like, get the BYU. And then like, I remember Walker mentioned this, like, yo, like they're throwing in money. I'm like, BYU, like, isn't that like a, whatever that type of school is, like a Mormon school, like they got like last time they were relevant like that was when they had Jimmer. Like, and it's just crazy how like you see them. Oh, okay. Danny Ainge is in, Matt Ishbia, probably put the good word in for hire my guy at there. And like it's really wild how they could potentially become a power in a few years. Like BYU, it's really crazy. But Darian DeVries taking over at West Virginia. Obviously, Coach Huggins, legendary coach. and obviously we've seen this before, and I'm mad at myself because a few shows ago we talked about all the great coaches retiring and no longer coaching, and forgot to mention Bob Huggins in that. He West Virginia, they lost a lot of guys. They lost a lot of guys. A lot of score. I think they have one of the highest percentage of points per game that they lost. And obviously, it's tough. But he brings in his son, who Tucker is a good player. So that what do you feel about him? You talked about it before, but now taking over, and like I said, we talked about taking over for legendary coaches a lot, but for him, what do you think his identity needs to be? Obviously we know Bob Huggins is going to be, tough defense, hard nose, all that, but what do you think his identity needs to be to get West Virginia back on the map?
I mean, I think it's kind of what you did at Drake, right? You get up and down, you run some great sets, you free up your shooters, and you just play pace and space, right? And I think that was one of the best things that he did there, because their offense was free flowing. It was an offense where dudes want to come and play for you because they know that it's an everybody eats type of system. And no, you're not going to, you shouldn't want to have the same identity that Bob Huggins had with Press Virginia. They do have Sincere Harris, who could kind of bring back the vibes of Press Virginia, because he's a dude that loves to pick up full court and get into point guards and make them pressure and feel that pressure. But at the same time, run your own style of play. The good thing is he wasn't the dude that has come right after Bob Huggins, because unfortunately they had Josh Eilert, who was the interim head coach last year. He was on Huggins' staff. So he's technically the guy after the guy, but he's not really at the same time. But do you? And again, this is going to be his last season coaching his son, Tucker DeVries. So I think you kind of have to take that into account. You got to just leave it all out there. Again, I'm pretty sure he's turned down other high major opportunities before he took this one, because he's had success at Drake for a very long time. So to me, stay true to what's gotten you here. Don't overdo it. Don't overthink it. Yes, it's a new level. It's an entirely different conference. It's arguably, I think, it's the toughest conference in the country. At the same time, stick to your roots. And if you got to adjust and adapt throughout the course of the season, adjust and adapt, because that's what the best coaches do. They adjust on the fly. They adapt and make things happen. So to me, trust in your work, trust in your coaching staff, and trust in the players that you brought in, right? And of course, it's tough because when you're a first-year head coach in a new situation, you're kind of just scrambling to throw together a roster. So you got to kind of just get anybody, not anybody, but they got some good players. Again, Amani Hansberry, I believe, from the DMV, is a dude that's waiting to take off. He's just waiting to take off.
They didn't return any, right? There's no returning, or maybe one or two returners, right?
I don't think they returned a single player. I could be wrong about that. Let me check. I mean,
I think they lost damn near everybody.
Yeah, they lost pretty much.
Which is tough.
Everybody.
That's tough to do. But now in the age of the transfer portal, you can obviously get guys, but still, I mean, that's a tough transition when you lose essentially everyone on the roster.
Yeah, they don't bring back anybody. They got an entirely new roster, but that's how it is. Again, guys don't commit to schools, they commit to coaches. It is some guys that do commit to the school. It happens very rarely. It's out there, but dudes and women too, on the women's side, they commit to coaches more than anything. So, and coaching staffs at that. But he'll be fine. Just stay true to your identity. They got some experienced guards. Some of you guys remember Joseph Yesufu, who was at Kansas a few years ago, was just at Washington State. Jaden Stone's a dude that's been around the block. Javon Smalls played at multiple different places. Sincere Harris started his career off at Illinois, same thing as Amani Hansberry. Tucker DeVries has been playing for a long time at Drake, right? So the pieces are there for them to be a solid in year one. I don't know how it's all going to play out. I'm very intrigued by Jonathan Powell, who's a freshman at Dayton, Ohio, too. I watched him play on the EYBL for All Ohio a couple years ago. So I want to see how they put the piece together, but I do think this is a team that should be considered as a dark horse in this conference.
All right, let's go to a team that pulled off the upset of a team that we talked about previous in the SEC pod, and that's UCF. They're one of the more intriguing teams in the country. Obviously, we know about some of their new acquisitions in Mikey and Dior, and that's kind of what people think about. And I don't think Mikey played from what I saw. Right, I think he was out, and Dior only played a few minutes. But Johnny Dawkins, former Blue Devil legend, He's been there for a little bit now. Just first of all, great win. Great way to start off the season, beating a top 15 team, and a team that some people think may be, do some damage in the SEC. Play hard-nosed defense. They did their thing. But Darius Johnson had an absolute, 24, 25 points. I think he did his thing, and he's going to be a key piece to this team. But talk about them, because they're definitely. They start, like I said, they start the season with a bang, with a big W. So, but is this something that we should expect? Like, this team's going to be better than expected, because a lot of people think that they were in the bottom of the Big 12, but big win. Is this something that we should be looking forward to with UCF?
I definitely think it's something to look forward to, but unfortunately for Texas A&M's case and Buzz Williams on what could be Selection Sunday, I think this is still going to be a bottom tier Big 12 team, man. And it's nothing against Johnny Dawkins. It's a testament to how good this conference is. But you're seeing dudes like Keyshawn Hall was highly coveted in the transfer portal this past season. I remember watching him a couple years ago. He was at UNLV with my guy Elijah Harkless, and he was a true freshman. He was a big body. He looked like he was a DN, but he slimmed down. He's got in that weight room. He's did everything he needed to do. He thrived and starred at George Mason last year in the A-10. And now he made his way to UCF. He's a big-time player, lefty, super physical, seeks out contact, loves to spin back to that left hand, get to the paint, and get to the free throw line. He does a lot of things. Dior Johnson, another dude. We heard his name for a long time if you're in the basketball community, right? Out of New York, originally out of Kingston, NY. Bounced around everywhere from high school to college. Hopefully he's found a home at UCF, and he's, made the most of it, because this is a dude that was just playing junior college basketball last year. But the pieces are intriguing. Even Jalen Sellers, a returner from last year, the pieces are there for them to be good. I just think, again, man, the Big 12 is a gauntlet. That's just the facts of the matter. You can have all these dudes, like we're going to talk about K-State, but if you don't get that chemistry right, it doesn't matter. And again, this is a huge, could potentially be a momentum-changing win for UCF, because I believe Texas A&M was ranked 13 or 12 going into this game.
13.
Exactly. So for them to win it on their home court, hold down home turf, that's all you ever want to do. So I do think they can continue to build on this. And again, this is a win that on Selection Sunday, Texas A&M starts to improve, which they have historically under Buzz Williams and Wade Taylor the past few years. And it's going to age really well for UCF's resume, right? So I think this is a very good win for them. And, Johnny Dawkins, he's a dude that's kind of been teetering on that hot seat. He's managed to survive it for a long time now. He had a couple of good years with Taco Fall and his son, Andre Dawkins. And
it should have beat us that year.
Exactly. They've been here. But, he's been just straddling that line of the hot seat. But I think this is another win that, hey, you just managed to get yourself some breathing room. So it's a big win for UCF. I think they can be a threat, but I just got to see more to believe it, man.
Yeah, I root for Johnny Dawkins. That's my guy. Duke legend. It's crazy to think at one point there was thoughts that he was the guy that was going to replace Coach K. And obviously, ever since that that game versus Taco Fall, y'all eventually took us down, but that game still has and it's crazy to think, like, if we lose, that was a second round game. We lose that. People talking about Duke crazy, because that would have been like, oh man, greatest team to flop, It would have been all time bad. But yeah, Johnny Dawkins, big win to start off. Very, very intriguing basketball team. I'm there. All right, so let's talk about some of the top freshmen that are, and there are some really good ones. And let's really good ones. And VJ Edgecombe, to me, I talk about him a lot. Obviously, he's he played at one of the top top schools in the country, at Long Island, and I remember talking about him when he was like a 3-star, and then I remember telling you, this kid's good, watch out. And then I remember writing an article about him. Then little just kept going, and then going to Long Island Lutheran and just playing for an actual monster. He just elevated his game, took it to another level, becoming a top 5 player in the country, and looked like he was going to go to Duke maybe, but then obviously Cooper changed the whole damn thing, and then was going to go into Baylor. And from all I heard, he looks. I mean, people are saying that he could maybe battle for that number 2 pick in the draft. That's how good he is. So he's definitely someone to watch out in Baylor. Trey Johnson, another a top 5 recruit going to Texas. We talked about him before. Jaden Quain's going to Arizona State. Flory Badunga going to Kansas. I think that helps. And we'll talk about Kansas a little bit. That helps to me. He's going to be a very key piece for Kansas, especially, helping up that front court. Carter Bryant going to Arizona. Jason Sona going to Arizona State. I mean, Hurley trying to go all in, trying to figure it out, trying to keep his job. Rob White, another Baylor commit, and Kenan Catchings, BYU. Obviously, we know they got some money there. But who are some of the most intriguing freshman prospects for you coming into the season?
Yeah, I think the most intriguing that's probably not being talked about a lot, but should be mentioned much more, is Christian Anderson out of Texas Tech. And this is a dude who I watched him play FIBA, I want to say earlier this year, actually. And he was playing for the German team, and he was playing on Eurobasket. He averaged 20.3 points per game and 5 assists, and he scored 31 and had 5 assists in the finals against Serbia, and he earned all tournament honors. And this is a dude that is originally from Atlanta, Georgia, 6'2" point guard, shifty, crafty. He has all the finishes around the rim that you could possibly ask for. I think he's going to play for Grant McCassin this year. I really do believe that. And especially, you lose a guy like Pop Isaacs, who was probably the least talked about really good guard in the country last season. I think he's going to shine at Creighton this year. We'll talk about him down the line. But Christian Anderson's a dude that can go. So I'm going to put that name out there for y'all to remember, because he's not going to get the hype in the same amount of noise as a VJ or Trey Johnson, but he's really, really good. And I think he's going to be down there in Lubbock for a few years. But that's definitely one. And then you look at the main culprits. I mean, VJ just an athletic freak, like you mentioned, originally from the Bahamas. People always like, oh, his handle's kind of suspect. Yeah, but his athletic ability makes up for that. Eventually,
100%.
Eventually, he's going to need that handle, when he gets to that next level. But for now, at the college basketball level, I don't even think that's going to be a concern. And when he's hitting shots, he's virtually unguardable. I know you can say that about anybody in the country, but especially for him, because you're not going to stop him from getting to the rim. You're not going to stop him from getting to the free throw line. So you really need him to be just bricking. And I don't think that's going to be the case this year. And I'm pretty sure he's going to be, if not the main guy, he's going to be that second guy in Scott Drew's office this year down there in Waco. They play tonight versus Gonzaga. I'll be up for that game. I know you'll be asleep, but I'll let you know how it goes. But VJ's a stud. And then right now playing actually versus Mo's Buckeyes, Trey Johnson. I mean, another dude from the Dallas-Fort Worth area. He was a stud on the EYBL. He's been a stud everywhere he's been. He's just a prototypical elite shooting guard in the making. He has the handle. He has the creation. He has the footwork. He's always on balance. He knows how to play off 2 feet. He's excellent in the rim, around the rim. This dude just has it. He can guard. Rodney Terry is a big year for him, right? Going from Big 12 to the SEC, so it's tough. But, Trey Johnson definitely in the mix there too, but we'll see how that goes. But, I mean, you just look at this conference, I mean, it's players everywhere. You mentioned Jaden Quainton, another dude. Originally was not even supposed to be a freshman this year. He's supposed to be a senior in high school. He leaves early, goes and joins Bobby Hurley down there in Tempe. He's a 6'10" athletic monster that hasn't even gotten close to how good he could be, right? Because that dude, he just has it. You've seen the flashes in the Duke game, right? They really couldn't stop him. He was a one-man show, but at the same time, that dude has it. He has all the tools, and he's going to be in college for a few years because he's young. He doesn't even meet the NBA age requirement as of right now, so he's going to be around. I'll be honest, I don't think next year he'll be at Arizona State. I hope that's not the case, but that's just where we're at right now in college basketball. But you got to look at acquaintance, and just everywhere you look, bro. I mean, it's just talent, right? And so I look at this conference. I mean, again, you mentioned Florida Benigna, but even Raquise Passmore, a lot of people don't know about him at Kansas. He's like a forward/guard, just gritty. Whatever a coach asks of him, he's going to get the job done. I believe he's originally from North Carolina. I watched him play for Combine Academy a few years ago. This dude just puts his head down and works. He's a grinder, and he makes it happen. any which way as possible. You need him to go make a play, he can make a play. You need him to guard the other team's best player, he can guard the other team's best player. You need him to rebound, he can rebound. You need him in the dunker spot, he can be in the dunker spot. You need him to hit threes, he can hit threes. Right? Marquise Passmore is a dude that does a little bit of everything. And then another guy, I'll be honest, I haven't watched too much of him, but I know you've heard this name a lot being in draft circles because he's getting all the hype in the world, is Igor Demin going to BYU. You know,
he's getting like top 5, top 10 buzz.
Yeah, he's supposed to be like a 6'8" point forward, right?
Yeah.
And he's supposed to walk in and just from day one be the best player for Kevin Young's Cougars this year at BYU. And again, I have to see more of it to believe it because people make it seem like that international route going to Division I basketball is just an easy transition. I hardly disagree. We've seen it flame out last year for Mick Cronin at UCLA, but it's tough. I want to see more of him, but I can't forget to mention him because he really is good. He is a player. I just have to see it translate fully to the Division I basketball court on top of the fact that his team around him isn't that good. You know, Cannon Catchings is really good. I will say that. He's another one to watch out for. You know, was originally committed to Purdue, decommitted, so I'm going to go to BYU. I'm going to get more opportunity. I'm going to get the ball in my hands from day one. So you have that. But I want to see how Igor Demin's game translates to the Big 12 because, again, not only are you highly rated as a freshman, but you're going to be the dude that has the ball in his hands most, and you're going to be at the top of every other team scouting report when they play BYU. So I think that's the most intriguing thing about it. But, I mean, you look at it, everybody in this conference has talented stuff, freshmen. VJ Edgecombes is just one of many. And I think a lot of these dudes are going to be around for some time, and they're going to develop. And I'm going to throw this one out there. This is the last one. The son of none other than Master P. Mercy Miller, man. Mercy Miller.
He's good. He's good.
He played his high school basketball out here last year at Notre Dame in Sherman Oaks. He played with Dusty Stromer 2 years ago, who's at Gonzaga right now. I don't know if he's going to play that much this year just because Houston is a guard factory. But trust me and believe me, Mercy Miller is going to be a star down there in Houston, Texas. Believe me, he is the goods. I honestly feel like he's kind of like I tweeted it. Him and Jace Richardson are very similar to me where they're almost so good that their coaches can't keep them off the court. And I honestly think that's going to play into effect this year for Mercy Miller. Houston is going to have a lot of blowout games this year. Mercy Miller is going to get onto the floor. So please watch out for Master P's son because he is next. And I guarantee you he will be playing in the NBA one day.
Yeah, he's definitely a good one. It's crazy seeing all these second. I know Master P didn't play in the league, but still, like seeing all these, you got a few on your team, so second generation guys, it's just it's really crazy. So let's give me the team. Coach team, I guess it goes hand in hand. But give me the coach under the most pressure in the Big 12.
Man,
the Rodney.
Maybe, but I mean, even them, they're going to
because if they lose today, we're gonna hear it. Texas, they don't play around.
Yeah, but remember too, they're in the SEC now. Them in Oklahoma left.
Oh, man, see, yeah, my bad.
No.
Yeah,
hey, no, don't worry, because I caught that too. I caught it too.
I still got to get used to it, man. I'm so used to the beat debate. Never mind, Rodney.
No, we're good. We'll save Rodney for another time. We're good though. We're here.
I got to program the brain to keep forgetting.
We're all good. So to me, again, I wanted to say Bobby. I want to say Tad Boyle. But I'm going to say it's Wes Miller. I'm going to go with Wes Miller at Cincy, man, because, again, Cincinnati is a major basketball program when they want to be. Mick Cronin had them jumping for years, right? Mick Cronin had some dogs out there for a long time, especially when they were in the Big East, right? You had Kilpatrick. Sean Kilpatrick was amazing, right, amongst other players.
Yeah.
So I just think, again, when you look at this Cincy roster, Jizzle James is going to be one of the best point guards in America this year, ladies and gentlemen. He's the son of former Hall of Fame NFL Edgerrin James, but he transitioned to the court from the field. Jizzle James is a player, ladies and gentlemen, and I mean like a big-time player. Out of Florida, too, he's going to kill. So I'm not worried about him. But you look at the rest of his team, Day Thomas is really good. You bring back Dan Skillings. Rayvon Griffith was a redshirt last year. They still have C.J. Frederick, which is crazy. I mean, you guys remember that name? He was at Iowa, Kentucky. So he's still around. You bring in Tyler Betsy. I know you watched him playing for the Wrens, in the UIBL a couple years ago. That's another underrated freshman right there, matter of fact. He could be a player this year for all we know. Arrington Page transfers over from USC. Struggled last year, right? Was following Isaiah Collier out of Atlanta. We'll see how he can be. Tyler McKinley. So, Lukosius, this Cincy team is talented. I understand why they're getting the hype. But again, Wes Miller has to show us. He did do an excellent job coaching at UNC Greensboro, right? I'm not going to knock it. I think he took them to the tournament once or twice. I could be mistaken, but he definitely got them there once. Now, how do you elevate this program and get them back onto the national scene? Because they've been in some recruitments. They almost got Isaiah Collier a few years ago, or last year, shall I say. They were right there. Everybody thought they were the perceived front runner for a long time. So, the question about getting talent in there is not the question. Now it's about, can you win at the level that they need you to? On top of the fact, I didn't even mention, we were just talking about Texas. They got Dylan Mitchell. Mitchell has been an NBA
transfer,
draft prospect, right? So,
for a minute,
you look at this Cincy roster, I think it's got to be Wes Miller. And I'm not saying if they flame out this year that he's going to get fired, but if they don't have some success with this squad, best believe going into next year, he's going to be on the hot seat. No doubt about it in my mind. And if it doesn't pan out this year, it's a chance it could go very, very left for him. But I don't think it will. But for my answer, who's on the hot seat and who has the most pressure, shall I say, what you asked, I'm going to go Wes Miller from Cincinnati.
Yeah, definitely. He has the talent, like I said, and you add Mitchell from Texas, who's been, like I said, on the draft circuit for a minute, so they got the talent. So yeah, definitely pressure. It's still weird to see. Still weird that Cincinnati's in the Big 12. It's just still stuff I got to get used to. I keep thinking I just thought Texas was in the Big 12, even in the SEC. But all right, Kev, let's tear them up. Let's tear up your teams in the Big 12. Are we going to start from bottom tier? Or are we going to start tier 1 to tier 2, tier 3?
Yeah, let's go bottom tier and work our way up like we have been.
Gotcha. All right, so tier 3.
Yes, sir. So tier 3, I mean, it's mostly the former Pac-12 schools, if I'm being honest. But let's start with Oklahoma State. Let's go BYU. Let's go Colorado, Utah, and Arizona State. I think I just said them. I could be mistaken though.
No, you didn't say that.
Okay, so I said Oklahoma State,
BYU,
in there.
Utah, Colorado, Arizona State, 5 teams.
Okay, and UCF will be the last one to round that one out. The mid tier, TCU, who is in a very interesting position right now. They have some players down there. I'm a big fan of Ernest Uday, who transferred over from Kansas, big-time bodyguard. They got Frankie Collins, who a lot of us thought was going to work out at Michigan, ends up at Arizona State. Now he's at TCU. So Jamie Dixon has a sneaky good team down there in Fort Worth. I want to see how they pan out, but I'm going to put them in that mid-tier. So I believe, was TCU the first team I said for the mid-tier? I'm sorry.
TCU.
So TCU. Then I'm going to go Cincinnati, who we just touched on. Mm-hmm. Then we'll go Texas Tech with Darion Williams. Chance McMillan is back. The Red Raiders had a good season last year. You bring in, again, JT Toppin was one of the most highly heralded transfers in the country, so I got to put them in there. Then I'll go West Virginia. Definitely got to put them in there. We've already touched on them with Coach DeVries out there, in the woods. Then we'll go, I think that might be it. Yeah. Oh, Kansas State is what we'll round out with that one. And Kansas State, again, you look at that roster, man. I mean, Coleman Hawkins from Illinois. Akora Core helped lead Stanford to the NCAA tournament last year. Doug McDaniel. I firmly believe that Doug McDaniel is going to put it together this year. And I say that because I love Juwan Howard, but I think Juwan Howard's biggest mistake last year was that he put all the pressure on Doug McDaniel to be the guy. But I think Tang is just allowing him to be that facilitator and floor general, and that's where Doug McDaniel thrives at. And to me, when you look at this team, David Castillo, another highly heralded freshman out of the state of Oklahoma, we touched on earlier, right? Dudes don't really stay in Oklahoma for some reason, but he's another one, guard. David Gasson, he killed us in that Sweet 16 game a couple years ago against my Spartans out there in Madison Square Garden, right? Ugana Onyensu, big-time freshman center from Kentucky. He was a highly heralded transfer target in the portal. UNC wanted him very bad amongst a couple other teams. Brandon Housen, another guy, right? So you look at this roster, Taj Manning, Bay Fall was supposed to be a guy at Arkansas last year. He was a McDonald's
Arkansas, right?
Yeah. He was a McDonald's All-American, originally from Senegal, played his high school basketball in Colorado. He was a 5-star freshman. So you just look at this team, it's pieces. And again, Tang had a bad year last year. They took a step back from the Marquise Noel team, but it happens, right? It was out the gate. That was one of his first teams. Now you got to start putting these pieces back together. And the good thing about some of these transfers is that they're not just one-year rentals. Like Coleman Hawkins is, and a couple of these other guys are, but for the most part, Core is older. I believe this is last year, but you're getting some dudes that you can build and lay a foundation with. And so that's why I'll put Kansas State in that middle tier. And then continuing on, Kansas State's the last one, actually. Yeah, Kansas State's the last one, that middle tier. Then the top tier, the big dogs, Arizona, Kansas, Houston, Iowa State, Baylor. And I'm going to just tell y'all right now, ladies and gentlemen, last year, I'm gonna do a humble brag, but I was one of the first people trying to tell people about Iowa State. And I'm going to continue to tell y'all about Iowa State, man, because as I mentioned at the top of the show, Keyshawn Gilbert, player, Curtis Jones, sniper, Taman Lipsey, ultimate floor general, Milan Momcilovic has the potential to be an All-American this season, man. He's a 6'8" forward that can legitimately score from everywhere in all angles, whether it's posting up, facing up, jab steps, pump fakes, everything, playing off 2 feet. This dude is a wired bucket getter. And then you look at some of the pieces they add. Yeah, they lost Nate Jones. Yeah, they lost Hassan Ward, but they replaced it with some talented transfers that could help in the front court. So when you look at who can win a national championship this year, my first instinct is going to be to go to Iowa State. That's just me. And I know it might sound crazy, but TJ Otzelberger is showing us right now that he is one of the best coaches in America. And I'm going to say this, and I know some Iowa State fans might get mad at me if they hear this, but when a job like Michigan State opens up, when a job like Kansas opens up, guess whose name is going to be at the top of those lists? It's going to be TJ Otzelberger. So I'm going to just put that out there right now. I'm not saying anything. I'm not speculating anything. I'm just saying he's going to be up there, when Bill Self retires, when Tom Izzo retires. But shout out to them Cyclones, man, because he's found his rhythm. And this is a dude that he went from South Dakota State to UNLV in 2 years to Iowa State. I believe this will be his 3rd or 4th year there. And he's had success at each single stop. You got to give credit to TJ Otzelberger, man. I just cannot say enough about him.
You're hearing his name, now or potentially, for potential job, opportunities for next season. The season just started. He's going to be someone that is going to be very sought off. And what he's able to do at Iowa State, that's not easy to do at Iowa State, to do what he's doing. And except he's bringing back a lot of good, really high-end players. Like you said, with Keyshawn Gilbert, Taman Lipsey, he's got some guys. And Iowa State really should be a team that I wouldn't be surprised if they're playing in the Final Four. They're just that good. So your top tier: Arizona, Kansas, Baylor, Houston, Iowa State. Kansas, obviously last year did not go the way a typical Kansas year. I think they were 23-11, 10-8 in Big 12 play. Just didn't go. The Hunter Dickinson experience was a little up and down. McCullers, dealt with injuries. He did have one of his better shooting seasons, but dealt with injuries. But this year, it feels like this year, especially Bill Self, I think he was really pissed off about last year. He was really pissed off that they struggled so bad last year after, potentially, it could have been, a national championship type of season. But obviously you get DeJuan Harris back, you get KJ, you get Hunter Dickerson back, you lose some guy. McCullers is a big loss. Furphy's a big loss, but
you get Rylan Griffin.
Again, Rylan Griffin, yeah. Like I feel like this team they're better equipped to have success than they were last year. And last year we thought they were going to be really good, but I really feel confident about Kansas this year. I think I think the bounce back is going to be really good this year. What are we feeling about Kansas?
I mean, you hit on it. They bring back some talented pieces between DeJuan Harris, between KJ Adams, between Hunter Dickinson. You know,
And Flory too. We talked
yeah,
about the freshman
Floyd
Flory.
Dominguez.
That
I told you guys
adds a
about
lot of size at the front court.
Yeah, I told you guys about Rocky's Passmore. Rylan Griffin to me was the X factor for a Final Four team in Alabama last
Family,
year.
yep.
Right, big time defender, big time shot maker from the 3-point line, and another dude was a late addition.
AJ Store too. Coley Kafat by AJ Store, like
averages
that's
almost 17
getter, right?
last year, right at
For Wisconsin. Yeah.
Yeah, and another dude that was a late addition for him. The dude, I believe, is David Coit or David Coit. I could be mispronouncing that wrong, but transferred from Northern Illinois, and he's been a bucket getter for them recently. So I want to see how Bill Self's going to balance all this out, because when you get into the thick of things in the middle of the season, you kind of got to cut your depth to like an 8-man rotation. Sometimes you can get away with 9, 10 certain years, depending on how things are shaking out, but it's a lot going on there. I think last year too, one of the bigger things that kind of set them back was that front court between KJ Adams and Hunter Dickinson. They don't really complement each other because KJ Adams is a physical specimen, but he can't space the floor. And Hunter Dickinson is a dude that is one of the most dominant post players in the country. He's working on spacing the floor for his NBA stock, but that's not really his bread and butter. So I want to see how Bill Self incorporates them and maximizes Hunter's game. And you look at that Gonzaga game last year, Gonzaga just attacked Hunter Dickinson every single time. They put him in that roll replace action, and they had Hunter Dickinson out there trying to guard an island, and he just couldn't get it done. And so how does he adjust to that in his final year? Because at the end of the day, let's call a spade a spade. Outside of his freshman season, Hunter Dickinson has not really been a part of a winning team. He's been amazing, but he hasn't won at a high level for what we call an All-American player. So how do you end off your collegiate career is a question that remains to be determined. So I want to see it. Bill Self being hungry, I'll never question him. He's the best coach in the game. You cannot deny that. You cannot argue that. So I want to see how the Jayhawks bounce back and respond, getting all these guys loading up on talent, and let's see how it goes for him.
Yeah, and with Hunter Dickinson, the pressure is going to be on because the last 2 years it was on Zach Edey, right? So we kind of forgot about Hunter. And like you said, ever since freshman year, has had the success for a guy who's, one of the better big men in the country, right? And one of the most popular, well-known players. So this year's on him. There is no Donovan Clingan. There is no Zach Edey. He is essentially considered the best big man in the country. So can he live up, especially after the down season of last year, him transferring there? He was supposed to be the difference, right? That was the big thing is, we got 100. Oh yeah, we're gonna be a national championship level team. It didn't happen. So can he adjust his game? Can he get better defensively? Is there going to be more? We see him take some threes. It's in his repertoire, but can it be more consistent? This team is a lot better equipped this year than they were last year for him. So I'm very intrigued to see how he handles that. The maturity. Is he ready to take that next step as a leader? Those are things that obviously he cares about his NBA draft stock. Those are things teams want. So I'm very intrigued because I think if he has the season, we know he can have, then he could be someone that's in, battling, for the Wooden Award. He's just that good. And I expect Kansas to have a big bounce back season, be one of the top 2 to 3 teams in the Big 12 and make a push for a national championship. They should be there. They have the talent. They definitely have the talent. And listen, Flory is going to help him a lot because now he doesn't have to worry about, oh man, I got to do everything. He could take some, take less punishment, so maybe he's fresher down, once they get to Big 12 play and when they get to, March Madness. So Kansas is definitely a team that should, be up there. Like I said, we talked about Iowa State, Arizona coming into the Big 12. That's intriguing. Houston, we dove into him a little bit, but Kelvin Sampson, he's getting up there, man. we keep talking. I keep hearing about there's going to be a coach or coaches. We're going to see more of the older statesmen. You know, we might see a couple more guys. You know, maybe your guy too. You know, if things don't go well, he's getting up there. You know, and we know it's the young man's game now. You know, but Kelvin Sampson last year, obviously injuries, they beat us. They definitely beat us. You know, in Sweet 16, but Houston. Is this the year? Is this the year that it happens? Because it's starting, Kev, it's starting to approach Gonzaga-ish territory. Where every year we're talking about, you know, can this, you know, especially for a Kelvin Sampson team, like, can it be it? Can this be? Is this the year where they hoist that trophy?
I definitely believe so. I mean, look, they have all the recipes for the most part that you needed. They've had the guards, they've had the big time wings, they've had undersized centers, but they make it work because they're so dominant at getting rebounds. And most importantly, they have the defensive capacity to guard anybody in the country. And so I think the only thing that's really held them back has been untimely injuries. Last year was a prime example, right? And I think a part of that is how physical they practice. They practice like football teams, honestly. And it's just tough. But you look at this roster, man, again.
They're like, it's like Tom Thibodeau, man. It's very Tom Thibodeau-esque, man. It's Kelvin Sampson is just the college version of Tom Thibodeau.
And it's crazy because most programs that lose a program legend like Jamal Shead take a slight step back. But I don't think that's going to be the case for them, bro. Just because you bring back everybody except Jamal Shead. You bring back your front court between Jawan Roberts and Javier Francis. You bring back LJ Cryer. You bring back Emmanuel Sharp. You bring back Malik Wilson. You bring in Milos Uzan from Oklahoma, right? Terrence Arsenal, we mentioned. Ramon Walker. Mercy Miller, we talked about. The talent is evident. JoJo Tugler got hurt late last year. He's back as a sophomore. So you look at this roster like everybody just has to get slightly better. And yes, that's easier said than done. But I've liked what I've seen from them in their exhibitions. I watched them play Texas A&M. I believe that was last week, could have been 2 weeks ago, but they dominated that game, just absolutely ran away with it. And again, the defense alone is going to win you a lot of games. Now, Emmanuel Sharp got to get better. LJ Cryer has to get better in his last year, but I think they will. And I think Milos Uzan gives them something different at that point guard spot because he's not really a traditional point guard, but he can be a floor general and he can score. And he has a larger frame than Jamal Shead. Jamal Shead is maybe 6 feet, maybe. That's probably being generous. He's doing his thing for the Raptors right now, though. But Milos Uzan is a real deal 6'4" guard that can see over the top of defenses and break dudes down one-on-one off the dribble. Jamal Shead last year, he was pretty much playing hero ball, honestly. But I think this year, again, guys are going to be more comfortable in the system. They're going to have more identified roles. And I think they're going to be a much more balanced offensive attack. And that's why I think just as much I love Iowa State, I think Houston can be right down there in San Antonio cutting down the nets early next year in the spring.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how they do. Like I said, injuries have definitely, hurt them. They dealt with it with quite a few the last few years, but they're going to be very fun to watch. I mean, defensively, we know what they can do. I mean, there's teams in the Big 12 that are going to be able to lock you up, and it's going to be an absolute dogfight in the Big 12. That's why it's one of the best conferences in the country. So, who's the player of the year, and who wins the Big 12?
Man, that's so tough. I'm going to say, honestly, player of the year goes to Keyshawn Gilbert at Iowa State.
Okay.
I'm a firm believer in his game. He's another dude that I believe he averaged 14 points a game, 13 points a game last year. But I think that goes up, again, because he's comfortable in the system. Yeah, he averaged 13 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists last year. I think those are all going to go up ever so slightly. I think if he averages 15, 4 and 4, he's the player of the year. And especially because we know Iowa State's going to be, I think, minimum their top 3. I think that's the furthest they'll finish, honestly. I can only see, truthfully, Houston being better than them. and maybe somebody else. But Houston and Kansas, that's really it. Like, I don't think Baylor's going to be better than them. I don't think Arizona's going to be better than them. So I'm going to say Keyshawn Gilbert. And that probably sounds crazy because most people probably wouldn't go in that direction, especially for this team. But I just think, man, Keyshawn Gilbert was a stud last year. And I watched him his freshman year, or excuse me, I think that would have been sophomore year at UNLV. He took off and went to a completely different level. And sophomore year, he went from 2 points a game his freshman year to 11 his sophomore year. A 9-point increase, and just like that. And so, again, I think the confidence and the familiarity in the system, I got to go with Keyshawn Gilbert, man, for the Cyclones. And then your second part was what?
Who wins it? Who wins the Big 12?
Man, that's the tougher one. That's the one that had me stumped. I'm going to say Houston. I'm going to go back to Houston again. They won the regular season last year. Iowa State won the conference tournament. I got to go with the Cougs. I just think they have everything for the most part. And coaching-wise, I just trust Kelvin Sampson to win big-time games on the road. It's not a coach I take in this conference. Maybe Bill Self, but outside of that, I got to rock with Sampson.
Coach Sampson, yeah. So before we sign off, just give me some intriguing storylines for the Big 12 that you're looking forward to this season.
Bill Self's redemption story. I mean, it's not a crazy redemption. I'm not going to say act like he just completely fell off the map. But, I mean, the last few years, I mean, he won national championship 3-4 years ago. So I'm not going to sit here and act like he just completely fell off the map. But I want to see how hungry he is because, I mean, he said that towards the end of last year. Kelvin Sampson maximizing his last few years because the crazy part is, too, his son is the head coach in waiting there, Kellen Sampson, who's an assistant coach. So the moment he retires, his son's going to get promoted. I think that's the reason that Kelvin has not left Houston because he wants his son to be the next dude in line. So I want to see
put him
that.
in the best spot. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think Houston is a basketball powerhouse. You know, you got the Fertitta family down there. They help with the Houston Rockets too. So, like, it all works itself out.
Stupid money they got.
Yeah. I'm looking at BYU. We touched on it earlier. Kevin Young, you're going to have the resources, and they're getting a lot of hype for a year one coach. And I remember this time last season, we were talking about Ed Cooley and Rick Pitino potentially making the tournament. Wasn't even the case. And I told y'all it wasn't going to be the case. I mean, it's not a knock against those guys. It's just hard to win big in year one. That's just the simple facts of the matter. So BYU's getting a lot of hype. BYU's getting a lot of love. I don't see it, but at the end of the day, the game is played between the lines and not on a podcast. So we'll see how that goes. And as far as the rest of the teams, Kansas State, another one, Jerome Tang. Can you keep the momentum that you had riding off of that Keontae Johnson and Marquise Noels? How do you bounce back from last season? Last season, you brought in another small guard in Tyler Perry from North Texas. Didn't work out. You got some other pieces there. Didn't work out. How do you reload with these pieces, and how do you keep the train rolling? And then lastly, Arizona. You are a fringe blue blood program going from the Pac-12 where, again, everybody was looking up to you to now you're a big shark in a big shark pond in the Big 12. How does Tommy Lloyd adjust to going from the hunted to the hunterer?
Mm-hmm.
That remains to be seen.
Yep. And like I said, the Big 12 is a different brand. And if you're Arizona, how did you adapt from the style of play you're playing in the Pac-12, now playing where a nightly basis you're going to be going against some of the better defenses in the country? So definitely definitely intrigued of how they adapt. Caleb Love and them boys adapt to going to the Big 12. But Kev, that's another good bucket in the books. I keep forgetting that Texas is not in the Big 12, people. So kind of catch myself because I keep forgetting all these damn teams, all these damn, they still going to be changing next year. The Pac-12 coming back, whatever. It's crazy. But Big 12 preview in the books. Good one, man. We're hopefully going to get the Big East done in the next few days, and then we'll talk about the best of the rest, and then really get full bore into this college basketball season, which today started from, what was the first game? Noon? College Charleston playing early. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
College Charleston played earlier. we're excited. Already some upsets early on in the season, and we're gonna get some big time matchups coming up real soon. So really excited. But yeah, Big 12 preview is done. We're going to be doing the Big East next, another tremendous conference. We're gonna be really fun to dive into that, into the Big East. But Kev, Get a Bucket podcast in the books, brother. Appreciate you. Any closing thoughts before we sign off?
Stay locked in, man. It's going to be a great season from November to April 1st. Stay locked in. College basketball is in a beautiful place. It's a reason we're seeing so many upsets because of the portal, because of NIL. There's no real parity like that, so anybody can beat anybody on any given night. Every single win is earned. Every loss is tough, but it's still a lesson. And just stay tuned, man. Get a bucket. We got y'all. We're going to be here covering the hoop scene, the Division I college basketball hoop scene for the entire season, as always.
Yes, sir. And make sure to follow us on X. Make sure to subscribe on Spotify, on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube at Off the Ball Network. Make sure to check out all the dope stuff at the Off the Ball Network. A lot of great basketball hoop content. Check out the spaces we doing, with the Hoopers and the whole gang. So make sure to check out. We're doing a lot of good stuff over there, covering the NBA, covering college basketball and everything. But on that note, be well, be safe, take care. Peace out, guys.